Hey, how's it going everyone? Josh here for Tech. And if you've owned a Redmi phone before, I think you know what I mean when I say these are one of the most bang for buck phones that you can purchase for those who just want a reliable Android device. And for an entry-level phone such as the Redmi 10, I don't think it's hard to say the same thing. With a refreshed design, upgraded cameras, and a whole new MediaTek chipset on board, can their latest model pick up from where its predecessor left off? Find out more as we dive in deeper. Beginning with the design, the Redmi 10 takes a bit of its curved nature from the Redmi 9 and Note 9 series, whereas the Note 7 and 8 came with a flatter aesthetic, which I honestly kind of prefer more. The rear panel is constructed out of plastic, which shouldn't come to a surprise at this price point. It also comes with a matte finish, so it's not going to be much of a fingerprint magnet, which is good. The main shooter, as you can see, is mounted on the top left side. And as for the camera bump, well, it still does have quite the protrusion. The frame, just like the rear panel, is made out of plastic as well. You'll notice it's not flush on the sides, which does bother me quite a bit, but at least it's not noticeable when actually holding it. It does still feel comfortable thanks to the back's rounded edges, although smaller hands might have a tougher time maintaining a constant grip. The clear jelly case that comes with the phone does make it less slippery, as well as protected from scuffs and scratches. On the left is nothing but your dual card tray with a provision for expandable storage, while on the right sits the volume rocker keys and the power button that also doubles as a side-mounted fingerprint scanner. At the bottom, you'll find the USB Type-C port, the primary microphone, and the main loudspeaker. And over at the top is your secondary noise-canceling mic, another loudspeaker, which means we do get dual audio outputs, and finally a 3.5mm headphone jack. All in all, the design is definitely still premium looking. But looking back at older Redmi phones, I kind of wish they still did the whole glass back thing, since I think it makes it look and feel a whole lot better. As for the screen, the Redmi 10 features a 6.5-inch Full HD Plus dot display and sports the usual bezels with a little bit of a chin. It comes with a pre-installed screen protector, and beneath that is a sweet layer of Corning Gorilla Glass 3. It's more or less the same screen size as its predecessor, except this time we're getting a punch-hole style front camera instead of the outdated dot-drop display that was present in its previous lineup. Another big difference we see here is that it now has a refresh rate of up to 90Hz, which is going to be a good advantage for gamers, or if you simply want a smoother scrolling experience. The quality of the display is pretty decent, and colors still remain vibrant thanks to its IPS panel. If I'm being blunt, it doesn't have as good of a contrast as what you'll find in an AMOLED panel. But it's still a good display that's usable in both bright and dark environments, which I believe is more important anyway. As for audio quality, the Redmi 10 is quite loud to no surprise. Since we do have top and bottom firing speakers, they do give a fuller sound that any common ear will be able to appreciate. But as with any smartphone with this type of configuration, it is easy to cover them up with your hands when in landscape mode, especially when you're gaming. Now, it'd be much better if we had dual front-mounted speakers for this purpose, but we're not complaining too much since I don't think there's a phone at this price segment that even has those. For its software, the Redmi 10 runs on MIUI 12.5 based on Android 11. And out of 128GB of internal storage, the system takes about 15.4GB, leaving you with around 112GB to work with. So if you're planning to get the 64GB variant, you'll most likely be left with around 50GB, so just keep that in mind. Of course, Google and Xiaomi apps do take up some of that space, as well as a bunch of pre-installed third-party apps like Netflix, Facebook, and TikTok to name a few. One thing I recently noticed though is how they added this sunlight mode, which is just an extra feature to make things easier to view the screen under direct sunlight. Now, there are a few other tricks this OS has, but already we could say that MIUI has come a very long way from when we first saw it. And with constant updates to its software, we're hoping the experience continues to be intuitive and user-friendly as it progresses. Underneath the hood, the Redmi 10 comes with MediaTek's latest Helio G88 CPU, which is arguably also the first smartphone to sport this type of chipset. It's coupled by an ARM Mali G52MC2 GPU, as well as either 4 or 6 GB of RAM depending on your preference. But personally, if you have the extra budget, the 6 GB version should be a good choice if you're planning on keeping this phone a little future-proof. With 2 Cortex-A75 cores clocked at 2 GHz and 6 Cortex-A55 cores clocked at 1.8 GHz, performance is more than decent enough when it comes to day-to-day use. And when it comes to gaming, it actually holds itself well even for some graphically demanding titles that we tested. But don't expect to be able to turn the graphics up to its highest settings. For example, games like Genshin Impact run on the lowest graphics settings, and from time to time you will see noticeable frame drops. Although if you're not too picky, they're still very much playable, especially if you tweak the settings just a bit. Shooters like Call of Duty and PUBG, on the other hand, work surprisingly well and are considerably smoother. But you will be limited to HD or medium in the graphics settings, which is still pretty good for an entry-level phone. MMORPG players, though, will be relieved to know that games such as Mobile Legends work flawlessly on the Redmi 10. Considering it isn't as demanding as other previous games, I think this is also going to be great for those who play Axie Infinity. If you're curious for some benchmark scores, we'll flash them on the screen for you to see. Focusing on the cameras, the Redmi 10 comes with a quad camera consisting of a 50-megapixel primary lens, an 8-megapixel ultrawide, a 2-megapixel macro, and another 2-megapixel shooter for depth sensing. While at the front, we do get an 8-megapixel selfie camera. Shots from the rear camera look great under good lighting, which is something we expected. The colors are not too vibrant, which is great for someone who doesn't like an oversaturated image, and dynamic range is commendable as well. Portrait mode with the main lens presents very good subject background separation. It works both on objects and people, but the latter provides much better results thanks to face detection. Ultrawide gives about the same results when it comes to color reproduction, although since it's just your typical 8-megapixel shooter, resolution and quality will be substantially less, especially in dark lighting. When it comes to shooting far subjects, of course, we're not getting a telephoto lens here. But it's good to note that the 10x digital zoom capability is fairly decent if you just want to take a quick snap. Shots coming from night mode are able to pull in just the right amount of light to bring back more clarity to the images. And although the slight grain and lack of sharpness is a bit bothersome, we can't deny that it still performed as intended. Macro shots show some pretty good results too, even for a 2-megapixel shooter, being able to show a fair amount of detail at just a few centimeters away. Just make sure you get good lighting exposure just like the ultra-wide lens to get the best results. And when it comes to selfies, with beauty mode off, it's nice to see the skin tone remain somewhat similar to real life. Portrait mode is also just as exceptional here as it is on the back, and even does a good job at retaining some bits of my hair on the side. Alright, so here is a sample video of the Redmi 10, recording at a resolution of 1080p at 30 frames per second, which is also going to be the highest recording capability of this phone. Now, you may also notice we do not get any image stabilization whatsoever, which probably doesn't come to a surprise anymore since this is indeed an entry-level phone. But more or less, it gets the job done and we are pretty satisfied. What do you guys think? Alright, so moving on to the front camera, we do have a resolution of 1080p at 30 frames per second, just like what we have on the back. And looking at it already, it does look pretty decent if I do say so myself. And if you are into taking selfies and vlogging, things like that, then this is a pretty good choice if you are on a budget. For connectivity, usual features such as Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 5.1, GPS, and even an FM radio can be found on the Redmi 10. But unfortunately, no 5G support for this one, so just be sure to remember that. Keeping the unit alive is a 5000 mAh battery with support for 9 watts reverse charging and 18 watts fast charging. Although, with the growing presence of 60 to 120 watt hyperchargers, fast may no longer be the word that I would personally use, since it does take about 1 hour and 56 minutes to reach from 0 to 100%. Now testing out its battery capacity with our usual video loop test, we were able to get a commendable score of 18 hours and 27 minutes, while PCMark's battery test gave it a score of 11 hours and 49 minutes. So at least with what the Redmi 10 lacks in the charging department, does make up for with its battery life. Alright, so to conclude this video, the Redmi series is a pretty tough lineup to beat. Of course, there are a lot of other brands out there that do have pretty good entry-level phones of their own. But if anything, Redmi hasn't been this long in the game for nothing. Their consistency in both progress and, I guess, innovation as well has become a testament to their experience in the budget-level market. And thankfully, from what we've seen just now, I think it's safe to say that the Redmi 10 still continues to live up to its name. Available in Carbon Gray, Pebble White, or Sea Blue, the 4 plus 64GB variant will cost you 7,590 pesos, while the 6 plus 128GB version is priced 1,000 pesos more at 8,590. And that about wraps it up for our review of the Redmi 10. Any plans on getting one for yourself? Let us know in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to our channel for more content, hit the bell icon so you guys don't miss any future uploads, and be sure to visit ukitech.com for the latest tech news and reviews. Once again, this has been Josh, stay safe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.